We want to have a strong connection with our kids. That's really, really important. So in the chat, I want you to think about this. I want you to think about, why are you homeschooling? Or why are you thinking about homeschooling? I'm assuming you're homeschooling or considering it. So why? Why is this important to you? I would love for you to type that into the chat. I would love to kind of see, why are we here? Why are we homeschooling? As a homeschooler, a former homeschooler, I love homeschooling. Did I love it every day? No. But overall, loved homeschooling. I loved being with my kids. I miss sitting on the couch, talking about current events, discussing, debating, critiquing. I miss um, watching videos together and discussing it. I miss family prayer. That was really important that we did as a family together. I miss just the conversations. I miss reading aloud when they were younger. I miss that. So I would love to know, like, what is it? Why are we homeschooling our children today? So type that into the chat if you can. Um, a little bit about me. I've been doing this for over a decade, and it started because I had three young boys, one of which displayed symptoms of ODD, oppositional defiance, extremely strong-willed. Some of my kids struggled with anger. Some of my kids struggle with anxiety and difficulty regulating emotions. I found it so much more challenging than the diaper commercials made it seem. They made it seem like everything is fun and cute, right? No, it was really hard. And so my pattern, what I would kind of do on the daily, is I would get my kids loaded into the minivan. They were safe, finally get going out of the house, and then I would sit on my step and cry. And I felt like the worst mother in the world. I felt like I had no idea what I was doing. I felt like I was yelling at my kids all day. I was trying to make them obey. I was trying to get them to do things, and I was missing their heart completely. That was me. I was sitting at the end of on my step in my driveway, and I was crying, and I felt honestly, like I felt the Lord say to my heart, one day you're going to use this to help some people. You're going to be able to help some other moms. And I thought, no way. No, there is no way. I don't even know how to do anything in my own family. Never mind. Right. So, if I can encourage you, if you're here with kids right now, then this is a great place. We're going to talk about how to reach their heart and build connection. If you feel like the worst parent in the world, I need you to know I've been there, and there is absolutely hope that you were given your babies and you have what it takes. I need you to hear that. You have what it takes to reach their hearts, but it does require some work. So let's go to our chat. Why are we there? If you're here and you don't have kids, maybe you're here because you work with kids, you've got grandkids, you coach kids, you pastor kids. Beautiful. These strategies can also work. So you are here for discipleship. Yes. You're hoping to gain more confidence and educate your kids well, to instill good values and character. I love it. I love it. I had a negative experience in the school system, and now I'm raising my 5-year-old grandson. Beautiful. Welcome. Absolutely. Um, 3 grandchildren in a Christian school. Yes. Okay. Okay. But you suspect things are changing. With my 3 boys, we did all the school. We did public school, we did private school, Christian school, and homeschool. And homeschool was my favorite. It really was for me. Absolutely, it was. Wonderful. Interesting, though. Notice getting an A in math wasn't on any of the chat list. Like, academics is probably not the number one reason you're homeschooling, I'm guessing, which is so interesting because when we think about the stress of regular homeschool life, a lot of it is around academics. And yet, when we think about it, the reason we homeschool is what? Strong family values, family connection, character development, discipleship, instilling good values in our like all of these beautiful reasons we homeschool. Academics is important. Don't get me wrong, But is it the very top of the list? Maybe not. Maybe not. So I'm going to challenge you a little bit there. I'm going to challenge you. I don't think that academics is the number one reason. It's up there. I want my kids to be able to be successful in life wherever God leads them, whether that's post-secondary, running a business, whatever they're doing. I want that for them. And so that might mean high academics for sure, but it is not the number one reason. Concern about math and other stuff. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's all important. But what if we can raise kids who have character to be responsible, to do hard things, to overcome? They've got the grit and resilience to be able to keep trying when they fail. They know how to figure things out and solve their problems. They know how to learn. They know how they learn best. They know what to do to learn. They would be unstoppable, right? If there was some subject that they needed for something down the road, they would know what it takes to get that done. And so I feel like let's focus on the qualities of life that are going to help them be successful in whatever they're doing. And then let's add the academics to that. Deal? So that's what I'm going to focus on today, because my session today is not on how to teach math. My session is how to connect and reach the hearts of your kids. And I just want to say that looking back, I think I spent a little more time than I needed to fighting over the math and the reading. And maybe I could have spent a little bit more time focusing on character development. That's what I will offer you today as a homeschool veteran. What do you think? Type it in the chat. Does God care more about our behavior or our heart? What do you think? What does God care more about? It's kind of a trick question because I hope you're going to say heart, right? God cares about our hearts more than our outward behavior. And yet, if we're honest, when we think about the regular frustrations of day-to-day life with kids, we get stuck on the behavior, don't we? We get stuck on the annoying and the frustrating and the things they do. We get stuck on the behavior. But God cares more about our heart than about our behavior. Now, is our behavior important? Yes. I would say yes. But can we consider that? Can we consider what should we be more focused on? Should we be more focused on the heart in our kids or more focused on the behavior? And that's where I would challenge and say, I think the heart. I think the heart comes first. That's what I am professing is we are going to focus on the heart first over behavior. Behavior is important, but it's not more important than the heart. Proverbs 23:7. You know this. The Lord doesn't look at things people look at. I'm paraphrasing. The Lord looks at the heart. We know this is the case. There's a joke about a 7-year-old. I will tell you, I get more emails and phone calls from parents of 7-year-olds than any other age. They are a fun bunch. So if you've got a 6 to 8-year-old in there, just know I feel you. It is a challenge. That is by far the number one most phone calls I get is for parents of 7-year-olds. It is a challenging phase. There's a story of a 7-year-old girl. Her parents are trying to get her to come to the table for dinner. And she's not, no, I don't want to come. I want to play. I don't want to be here. So the parents are getting mad. They're saying, no, you come and sit down. It's time to sit. We're going to eat our dinner. You have to stop playing. "Oh, I don't want to. It's a big battle." Finally, little 7-year-old Sarah, she comes over to the table. She sits down. She says, "I'm sitting on the outside, but I'm standing on the inside." And that is our 7-year-old. So the behavior, yes, she did technically obey. She did come and sit at the table. But what was her heart doing? Her heart was standing. And that's what I want us to think about. Oftentimes when I'm working with families, parents will say things like, I don't like his attitude and he stomps across the room and he huffs at me and he's rude and sassy. but he technically did do what I asked. So I feel like I can't have a consequence because technically, like he did do it. And I would say, no, actually, we care more about the heart. So what that means is, in fact, if we ask our child to come to the table and they are huffing and stomping and rolling their eyes and being miserable, well, even if their behavior, their outward behavior might look like it's obeying, what's going on in their heart? Yeah. There is disobedience, there is rebellion, there is anger. So we can have a consequence for that. We can discipline for that. We can, and probably what I would suggest, just to have a little bit of grace as we're working on these things, is you could call Sarah aside. You could say, Sarah, now you did come and sit at the table, but that was not calm. That was not respectful. We need to try that again. So I love the redo. I love a redo. What that will do is it will tell you what's going on right away. Because if I ask Sarah, sassy Sarah, to have a redo, one of two things are going to happen. She's either going to say, okay, and she's going to do it, and she's going to watch herself this time and choose to obey. In which case, we could say, that's great, fantastic. You chose to do the right thing. High five. Come on, let's have some dinner. Or she's going to look you in the eye and say, no, no, I meant it like that and I would do it again. So then 100%, you know exactly what's going on in the heart and we can move to a consequence. So I think the redo is a powerful tool. It's a way that you can connect. You can find out, it will reveal really quickly what's going on in the heart and it will kind of force your kids to make a choice. Okay, what am I going to do here? I can't do both. I can't kind of obey, but do it with a bad attitude. I have to choose. And so I think it's a great way to help your kids work through that. In the chat, what do you think about that? Maybe you're already doing something along those lines. Have you ever, instead of yelling, threatening, begging, getting mad, have you ever considered just pausing and having a redo? How'd that go? In the chat, it says the redo is so good. Good. I'm glad you're already doing that. It's a wonderful way to encourage our kids to make a better choice without turning it into a big deal. Now, sometimes our kids turned it into a big deal, which is okay. That's typical kid behavior. But in the chat, what do we think about the redo? What do we think? I would love to hear your thoughts on that. As you're typing, I feel like what's interesting is you could think of discipline and you can think of punishment. And we use the words interchangeably, but punishment is really like, I need to make you pay. It's punitive. When you think about, somebody exacting something on I need to make someone else hurt. I need to make them suffer. I need to make them have to pay a price. When in fact, what we are called to as disciples is to discipline. So to discipline is to make disciples. So instead of thinking about what they did wrong, one thing that will really help is as you're working through some of the harder things in parenting and homeschooling, think, what do I want them to do? Not what am I mad at them for doing? Because that leads you down a path of punishment, punitive. Instead, what do I want them to do? What do I wish they did instead? What do I want to teach them? And let's come up with a consequence that's more in line with that. So notice, even in the redo, we're encouraging our kids to make a better choice and to follow through doing it the way that we want it to be done. So no slamming, no stomping, no eye rolling. We're just going to do it. So when I ask you to take out your math or it's time to practice reading, if you're going to stomp and throw a pillow off the couch, well, come on, let's try that again. Let's try it again. Let's try it and let's have a better attitude this time. You know what? We're going to read and it's going to be great. Let's just do it. Let's practice walking over calmly. Because I'll tell you this, kids do not grow out of the phases. This is something they'll grow out of it. Oh, the terrible twos, which I think 2-year-olds are so fun. Oh, the difficult threes, whatever it is. Oh, they'll grow out of it. I promise you they will not. The temper tantrums change. How they look is different. but the character doesn't. The behaviors at their root don't. So a 2-year-old throwing a tantrum, if we don't work on developing the character, that will become a 5-year-old that stomps. That will become a 9-year-old that yells. They can still throw themselves on the floor and scream and kick and yell. That could become an 11-year-old that lies. That could become a 15-year-old that argues, that lies, that slams doors, right? It doesn't go away. We still have to develop the character, and a redo is a really effective way to do it. I'm grateful. I'm grateful in the Bible that God uses words with me. I can read his word. I can get wisdom. Right? Oftentimes, the Holy Spirit, right? There's just like God will use words with me. And if I'm wise, I will obey them. uh, so let's not be afraid to utilize that. Let's not be afraid to pull our kid aside and be like, hey, you know what? I've noticed this is going on. I see this as a pattern. I see that you have a really hard time sharing with your brother. Or I notice when you're playing a video game, you have a hard time turning it off. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about it this time. But if words don't work, we are going to move to actions. And let's give them the opportunity. A redo is a great way. So Doris says the redo takes time, but it is worth it in the long run. Amy says it's better than what I thought. Yeah. Yeah. Which is great. So let's utilize the redo. Let's not be afraid to use words, but can I say words one time? Where we fail often is we can use too many words too often. So I know you're like, Jen just said to use words, and now she's saying don't use words. What is this? What I mean is I like to teach that we give an instruction and then we give one reminder. And that's it. That's it. We give one reminder. And I want the reminder to not be a threat, a beg. So I'll give you an example. So the instruction might be, Sarah, it's time to come sit at the table now for dinner. That might be, right? And then Sarah's not coming. So then I like to offer one reminder. Sarah, I gave you an instruction. Remember, it's time to come to the table to eat. Notice I did not say, Sarah, please, please, will you come and sit at the table? This is so hard. I do everything for you. I've cooked this dinner. The least you can do, right? I'm not begging. I'm not saying, Sarah, you better come to the table or else I'm going to start counting. Or else, you know what? If you don't come to the table, I'm going to take TV away. Like, no, that would be a threat. I'm not doing that. I'm reminding her of the instruction I gave her. And then if she chooses not to obey, then we're going to move to a consequence. And I do have some ideas for you for consequences, because that always happens. We get through the character piece and then parents are like, but what do we do when they say no? What do we do when they disobey? So we are going to get there. What I want you to leave this portion of connecting with our kids, I want you to leave with this. Everything stops for character. Character is the most important piece. And in my homeschool days, my kids would try to push back on that. I would notice something. So where I would use words is I might pull someone aside and say, "Hey, you know what? I think the way that you're talking to your family right now is kind of mean. Like, can we talk about that?" So notice that's different than an instruction. That is me trying to offer some wisdom. That's where I would use words. In an instruction, I'm going to give the instruction and then I'm going to give one reminder, and then we move to action. But when we're offering wisdom, to pull a kid aside and say, hey, you know what? That didn't come out very, very well. Let's try that again. I think that's a great place to use words. Everything stops for character. In our home, I can remember multiple times where we were doing some homeschool subject and something would go wrong, let's say math, because that's a common one for lots of families, right? Math isn't going well, kids are angry. And so I just pause. We're pausing math. We're going to talk about, how we treat mom and how we can talk to mom and how we don't talk to mom. We're going to talk about, words that we use and words we don't use. We're going to do that. And we're going to have a consequence for that, which I'm going to get to. And my kids would push back. No, I don't have time. It's school time. I can't. I'll have to do it later. I have to get my math done. It's school time. And I would say, nope. Everything stops for character. Everything stops for character. Oh, but I'm supposed to be going to soccer practice right now. We have to leave. Nope. Everything stops for character. Oh, but my friend's over. Oh, well, everything stops for character. Everything. Everything. Character is the most important thing. The most important thing. So if there is a character weakness in your kids, everything stops. And we talk about that, and maybe we have a consequence for that. And that is the most important thing. Everything stops. So stomping, redo, rudeness. Out at a mall, we can have a redo in the mall. I don't want to purposely be humiliating or shaming my kids, so make it age dependent, but there's no reason you can't just politely walk over and say, hey, you know what, let's try that again. Let's just go over here and try that again. Or there's no reason you can't pull someone aside and offer wisdom. Say, hey, you know what, I'm noticing this. Let's work on this. Yeah. So what are we going to do before I move to consequences? What is something in the chat that has stood out to you so far? What is something you're going to leave here with? I want to really make sure we get to the connection piece before we kind of move into the discipline, the consequences, because it's important. But I think connecting with the kids and reaching their heart is the most important thing. And we're going to do that by developing character. I want you to praise every good bit of character you see, every good bit. You know what? That was really kind. So kindness, that was responsible. Hey, you followed through. You finished that assignment without me having to ask you to. Wonderful. You put your boots away when you came in the house. Fantastic. That's great. You did that without me asking. Beautiful. So what is something? Type something in the chat. Praise good character. Yeah. What's something that you're going to leave here with that's going to encourage you as you're going back into your life with kids, with grandkids, homeschooling, teaching, mentoring? What can you apply from that?
I'm just going to interrupt here. I
Yeah.
love the whole like everything stops for character, but how you are saying that, there's no shame attached to that. There's no shame in the redo. There's just like this is just a learning experience. We're going to take this learning experience and we're not going to shame, we're not going to punish in that. We're like I mean, we're going to get to the consequences, but there's no like you are a bad kid or you are a bad
Yeah.
girl. Like it's just hey, let's do that over again because this matters, right? Like
Hmm.
I love that.
Hmm. Practicing what we want our kids to do is it's like this forgotten tool. We spend a lot of time telling our kids what not to do. And I've been there. I've spent a lot of time getting upset with my kids for doing the wrong thing, but practicing doing the right thing, that is powerful. And why not, right? If I was gonna, let's say I was gonna try and run a marathon. And I hired a coach, for example, and that coach just watched me run and said, no, you're doing it wrong. Your knees, oh, your ankle. No, that's not how you run. No, a coach, I mean, there might be a little bit of that, but I think the coach first would be like, let's practice doing it the right way. I would say most of my training with my coach would be him teaching me the right way to do it. And very little of it would be no, 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 no. Right. So let's take that to heart and think everything that frustrates us. Okay, let's go back and say, okay, how can we practice doing it the right way? What do I wish they would do instead? And how can I make that a part of our life? What do we got to do? Do we practice it every day? Do I talk about it more? Does the redo help with that? I love it. So Courtney says everyone thrives on positive attention. 100%. Absolutely. I mean, you could apply that to our marriages. And I don't even mean that in a condescending way. Seriously, if my husband told me, "Hey, thanks so much for doing this, running this errand for me. I really appreciate it." Guess what? I'm going to think of more errands I can do for him. We do more of what people notice, what is complimented, what is praised. So yeah, point out every little thing that's good. Point it out. Point it out and you will see more of it. Something that will help with that, I want to talk about this. This is a gem jar. And you can just go to any what dollar store. You probably have craft stuff in your house. You can use beans, dried beans, dump them in a jar. And this is the gem jar or the bean jar if you're going to use beans. And the way that I utilize this is a cooperative activity. So all of the good character, everything good that you see, someone is kind to someone else, someone shares, someone does a nice thing, someone says good words, someone gives a hug, someone helps you without being asked, or when you ask them, they do it with a good attitude and a smile. Like that's wonderful. They do a good job. Then you're gonna put some gems in the jar. So you dump it out, you put a bunch in. Now, with just know for like this many gems, I'm not putting one in at a time. I'm putting probably 5 or 10 in at a time because I want to fill this up. And if you want to see a transformation in your home, do this, because my only rules for this is you can put in as many gems as you want for whatever you want. There's no like chart. There's no, kindness gives you 3 and emptying the dishwasher gives you 10. There's not, you decide. You decide. So let's say you're feeling good today. Everyone gets a whole pile of gems. And maybe the next day, maybe you would say, you know what? We're having a hard day, but we've only had 3 tantrums, not 6. So I'm putting gems in the jar. You know what? We're doing well. We're trying our best. You decide how to fill this up. The rule is, though, that the kids can't put gems in, only you. And they can't tell on themselves. They can't come up to you and say, Mom, I just put sister's book away. But what they can do is they can tell on their siblings. So sibling come up and say, Mom, sister just put my book away for me. So this is the way to fill it up, is to notice the good that's going on. You could notice it. You could say, hey, you know what? That was a kind way to say thank you. Or you came to the dinner table when I asked you to come. Wonderful. I'm throwing some gems in. You can put gems in. You just can't tell on yourself. So what that does is it fosters this cooperative kind of feeling in the home where all of a sudden the kids are noticing the good things people around them are doing. They're going to come up to you and say, you know what? My sister just said a nice thing to me, or my brother made me a snack. You're going to see the kids are all of a sudden going out of their way to like make each other's beds and help them and to say, you can go first. I just share, she just shared her toy with me. I want you to fill this up and I want it to take less than a week. So you have to start noticing the good. And I promise you, when you start to see little things, you will see more and more and more. Sometimes it can just feel like there's a black cloud in our house and it just feels heavy. But when you do this activity, it starts to shift that. And all of a sudden, wait a minute, like I'm seeing there's lots of positive actually. My kids, they're really good. They're good kids. And this isn't as hard as I thought it was, and there's lots of great things going on. And that was really kind what they did. So it helps us in our parenting, it helps us in our homeschooling, our teaching, but it also helps the siblings to remember that, hey, you know what? There's lots of really good, kind things about this family, and we can get along well. We can cooperate. So this has been a really powerful tool. You use any jar. So what happens sometimes is a parent will be like, "Oh, I love this idea. I'm gonna go and buy this beautiful thing. I'm gonna make this, and it's gonna be great." And guess what? Then it never happens because you had this amazing idea and you were going to make a poster and and it became like a thing on your list. No, just get any jar, any bowl, any cup, find anything you've got multiples of in the house. I will say marshmallows don't go well because they go missing. I will say I had one family use chocolate covered espresso beans. Not recommended. That was a wild homeschool day for but something, of course, make sure it's safe if you've got littles, all of that. But the gem jar, the bean jar, something. You can start at any time. There's very few rules. You decide. This has been a really great tool to just change the atmosphere in your home and start having more positivity, start seeing the good. And now, but what about on the flip side? When they say no, or when they don't do it, or you ask them for a redo and they do it again, but they're stomping and rolling their eyes again, that's when we have what I'm calling the job jar. So this would be different than family work. This would be different than chores. This is the job jar. So this would be like, oh, sassy Sarah, this would be Sarah. I gave you an instruction to come to the table and you chose not to. So you need to go and get a job from the job jar. So Sarah has to go. Kind of. Sarah has to go. She's got to pull one of these out and she's got to do what it says. This says wipe down all bathroom sinks. So maybe someone is rude and sassy. Wipe the table legs. When's the last time you cleaned your kitchen table legs? I'm guessing never. So just a damp cloth. I will tell you, I've given my kids a spray bottle. It was a bad idea. Bad idea. Just a damp cloth is the best. Empty the kitchen garbage, age appropriate, of course. There's one in here too that I love. I always throw one in called mercy because, there's mercy for us sometimes. Sometimes we don't get what we deserve, right? And so the cutest thing ever is when my kids would be digging in the job jar and they'd be saying, "Oh, please, mercy, please, please, mercy." And then, oh, and here it is. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see it? Mercy, hooray. And so then we would talk about that. We would talk about our faith and our life and how good God is. So these are some ideas. Now I have here, I'll share my screen. I have here, oh, I'll just show it to you. That's the wrong thing. There we go. I'll show, never mind. I couldn't do it. I have a list. If you're thinking, I don't know what to put in the job jar, I don't know what to do, I have a list. I was going to share it to you, but it's got probably a couple of hundred different ideas based on ages. So if you would like that as a free resource, I'll type the email into the chat. And if you send me an email, whether you're watching this live or you're watching it later, send me an email and I'll type it in now. And I will send you that resource. I will absolutely. It's just familiesmattermost@gmail.com. And you can say, "Hey, Jen, can I please have the job jar list?" So all you're going to do is go through that list. You're going to cut out the ones that are meaningful to you, that you think would work, that are appropriate. Cut them out, stick them in a jar. You're good to go. So I feel like I'm trying to do everything I can to make sure that you're good. There's nothing, you don't need to go to a store. You can start with whatever you have and you can work on this. This is a way to work on character development, to work on discipleship, to reach our kids' hearts, because that's important. And if I can help you to do that without yelling, without overreacting, without taking it personally, without getting emotional, something that I will do is I'll say to myself sometimes, is this typical kid behavior? Whatever it is it typical kid behavior? And if the answer is yes, then I don't need to overreact. I don't need to be emotional. It's not personal. I promise you this. Your kids did not wake up this morning with a plan to make you miserable. I promise you they didn't. Like they did not. They didn't wake up and was like, "I'm going to disobey mom today," or "What can I do to like make dad angry?" They don't. They have their own thing. They want to be connected with you. They 100% do. They want to be connected. You are the most important people in their lives. They want that connection. They are not waking up. It is not intentional. They have their own stuff to work on. They really do. And so we're going to help them with that. And if we can reduce our emotion, that will help us to reach their hearts. Because I'll tell you, if we can stay calm and deal with the situation, let's say our kid has to take something out of the job jar, they have to go and wipe a table leg, and then they come back. They come back and say, "Okay, I did it. I wiped the table leg." Then you have an opportunity to talk to them if you're calm. And if they are calm too, and I find the job jar is the most effective way. I've experimented with all the things, with the going to bed early, removing privileges, taking away screens, fining them allowance. We've done it all, but the job jar is the most effective because it's immediate. It happens right now. They have to work it out. And so maybe they're angry when they start going, but it's something physical. They have to wipe something. They have to do some kind of movement. We're not sending them away to time out to sit by themselves and think about it. We're actually getting them to work. What I like about it is we're not saying, "Get out of my sight." We're saying, okay, you know what? You actually took away from the family here. Like you took away some of the value of the family. You need to add something back in. So you're going to do that. And then we're going to talk about it. And so I like that. I feel like it works well. I think the physicality of it is good for our kids to work out some of their frustration. Lots of times a kid might stomp into it. They get their job fine and they're wiping down the table. And then they come back and they're calmer. And they're like, okay, I did it. It's done. And now we're able to talk. The goal is when you can see into their eyes. And have you ever had that where you can look into their eyes and you feel that connection? You feel like there is something there where you're both listening, you're hearing what they're saying, they're hearing what you're saying. And in that moment, whatever you say to them is going to go right into their heart. Like when I say reaching their heart, in that moment, anything you say is going to go directly into their heart. So let's be careful that we aren't angry. We're not overreacting. We're not bitter. We're not moving into that punitive, I want you to pay now. So I'm going to say something because I want you to feel hurt now because I felt hurt or you hurt your sister. Like let's really be careful of that and just recognize that we have an opportunity to speak life into them. And yes, the behavior might not be okay. And we need to work on it, absolutely. But the heart is important, and we don't want to risk that. We don't want to lose our connection with our kid. So, in closing, I wanted to I'm going to try sharing my screen one more time because I wanted you to see this. Let's see, what did I do wrong? I wanted you to see this. I also will add this if you want. If you send me an email, I will add this to what you get. Uh, let's see. Ta-da. You should be able to see this.
Yep.
I got it right this time. Okay. So when you get a puppy, do you know how to tell how big that dog is going to end up being? You probably do, right? You have to look at their paws. They could be the tiniest little puppy, but if you look and they have massive paws, you know what kind of dog you're dealing with. You know, they're really cute and small right now, but they are going to be massive. You can tell by looking into their paws. And at first, when you get this puppy, they're sweet and they're chewing on everything and they crash into the wall and they make a mess, but they are growing into their paws. They are developing, they are becoming who they were created to be. And what if we think about our kids that way? How can we help our kids develop their strengths while they are learning to manage their God given personalities? So if I were to say to you, my child is so bossy, my child is bossy. They are always arguing with me. They think they're right all the time. They want to be in charge of their siblings. They don't like, they want to go first. They don't like when someone else has the idea of the game. They want it to be their game, right? Then we would say, "Oh, is that leadership?" Actually, maybe their pause, right? There's leadership there. They're growing into their pause. So wouldn't it make sense if I were to say to you, our kids are going to get it wrong before they get it right,
Hmm.
right? Aren't we? When we're learning something, we're figuring something out, we probably are going to get it wrong before we get it right. So a child that is learning, developing leadership, how would they get it wrong at first? Yeah, doesn't that make more sense? Well, of course, a child with leadership inside them. Okay, how does that go wrong? Well, they're bossy. They lead, but it's not in a fun way. It becomes harsh. They're impatient. They're inflexible. They always have to be first. They want to lead, but nobody wants to follow, right? Like that, of course, that could look like a leader child growing into their paws. What if it's not on this piece of paper? I think it's on the next page here. What if you've got someone super artistic? Oh, great. It's not here. Well, we have creative. What if you've got someone super artistic and their God-given personality is going to be something along the lines of storytelling, creative, um, yeah, imaginating, like come imagining, thank you. Like that was it. What if that was their gifting? Well, if they're gonna get it wrong before they get it right, wouldn't it make sense then that okay, they might have a hard time with storytelling. So maybe lying could be an issue, or you know, stretching the truth a little bit to make it more enticing, to make it more interesting. That could be something they struggle with. If we've got someone that's super creative, yeah, lying could be an issue. Um, it could also be like that they have a harder time deciphering between like daydreaming and what really happened. So sometimes with younger kids, it's not really a lie, it's just what I wish could happen or what I imagine could happen. What if you've got someone super creative, but it's a little bit more artistic? They love crafts, they love to draw, they love art. Maybe their God given destiny is going to be something down the road where they're an artist, they're crafting something. How does that look for you raising them? They're going to get it wrong before they get it right. That's going to look like a bunch of different craft projects, half done, piles all over your house. It's going to be messy. It's going to look like you coming into the room and your child was like, I had this great idea. I took apart the coffee table and I'm going to paint this thing on it. It's right. That's what you're going to be dealing with. Of course. Of course it would. What if you have a child whose core is going to be justice motivated? Like this group of adults, of parents, of grandparents, of coaches, of mentors, of pastors. Freedom is very important to you. So if you had a child that was justice motivated, what would that look like for them to grow into their pause? What would it look like for them to get it wrong before they got it right? It would look like no fair. No fair. If you've got a no fair kid and everything's about the fairness, well, actually, it's about justice. It's about what they think is right and what they think is wrong, and it's no fair. As they're developing this character, as they're growing into their paws, yeah, they could be a little lawyer looking for loopholes, trying to get out of stuff, badgering. They could be argumentative. Maybe they refuse to apologize. They could be obsessed with the fairness of it. Yeah, so I want you to think about the most difficult, frustrating aspects of your children or the kids in your life. And let's think about it this way instead of what I don't enjoy about them. And I know you love them, but instead of that, what if it's oh, okay, what is inside them that we're going to develop? And instead of being upset with how they're created, let's let's really think about what can we do to bring out the gold. Okay, if I've got a justice motivated kid, let's talk about that. Let's talk about it and let's work on developing that idea of the right way and the wrong way to go about it. And how can I help them in that? If you've got a leader as a kid, how can I help them to see, okay, yeah, you want to lead, but you also want people to follow. So we got to work on some of these skills, you know? If you've got even at the bottom here, if you've got a child that deep down there's kindness in them, even that, even though you're thinking that could be a good thing, and it is, but where we can get it wrong is we can move too far into people pleasing. We can move too far into we're too lenient. We're going to compromise. We can't speak up. Maybe our child avoids conflict and they won't stand up. They won't say no. They won't, right? We can get it wrong that way too. So no matter what their God-given character qualities are, there's always those weaknesses that we get to help them. We get to encourage them to develop in it. So let's not make it mean we're doing something wrong as parents. Let's not make it mean that we have failed somehow. No, our kids are our kids. And I'm going to stop sharing. And instead of overreacting, taking it personal, making it mean that we've failed somehow and we have to fix them, let's instead just think of it as like, oh, okay, you know what? I think we're going to work on developing kindness. I think we're going to work on, justice and what that looks like. I see that there's creativity, there's artistic, abilities and talents and giftings in you, but we need to work on following through and diligence and responsibility. Let's think of it that way. So I wanted to leave you with that. I wanted to leave you with hopefully you feel encouraged to make character the most important thing. Yes, academics do matter, of course, but that's a different webinar. This webinar is about reaching the hearts of your kids. You can do it. You can do it and still have obedience. You can do it and still have consequences, but these consequences are designed to help you still connect, reach the hearts of your kids, not overreact, and really work with them as they are developing character. So that's it. That's what I have for you today. I would love your questions. If you send me an email to the website that I've put in the chat, thank you, Doris, for adding that in. I will send you that quality list if that will be helpful, and I can send you the job jar list also.
That's fantastic. And if you're listening to this after we're live right now, just make sure you put in the email what you were listening to
Oh, yeah.
and what you would like to get from Jen. Jen actually has so many resources on her webpage. There's courses, there's newsletters and coaching and podcasts. I just encourage you to check it out. There's more freebies on her website as well. I was just checking them out last night and printing some off.
Ah, yes.
No, even though my kids are a little bit older, I wish that I had some of these tools when they were young. But I love all the ideas and good ideas to for even grandkids, like we were just seeing in the chat. Several of us are grandparents already. That's exciting. Jen, there's so many gems in there.
Oh, the gem jar.
That's right. I love the developing the strengths while learning to manage their God-given. Like just how we can actually take a look at like, okay, who did God make my child to be, and how can I help them to develop that? And what's the redeemed version of that look like?
Yes.
I love that. That's so good. And for all of us that have, like each of our kids is so unique and different, and being able to kind of customize our parenting, I think is so important. That's
Mm.
wonderful. Um, yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Um, it's just so good. There's so many things here that are wonderful here. And I love that what you also said about your kids are going to get it wrong before they get it right.
Yeah.
Like just, in job training, it's just, that you're gonna, they need hands-on experience, and
Yeah.
it's okay. And I love just the no shame here,
Yeah.
and just taking the emotion out of it, just and realizing that just because your kids do something that is not appropriate or whatever, it doesn't mean
Mhm.
that they're bad kids, or they really want to develop that. Jen, I did have a question for you. I think I know some of the answers to this, but I'd love to
Oh.
ask you anyways. What are some resources? Like, I know that you have so many resources. What are some other things that people can, if they're really interested in going more into this, is there anything that you
Yeah.
would recommend?
Well, I will tell you some of my foundational training. So please go to my website because I've got free resources there too, and a podcast. The podcast is great because I can do a deeper dive than, let's say, a little TikTok video. I can actually spend some time going into a deeper topic. So I do really recommend that. Um, I will say okay, so my original training, my parent coaching was from an organization called biblicalparenting.org. I love their resources. I teach some similar things. Originally, when I started finding the tools, most of them came from that organization, and eventually they hired me, and I was teaching parenting webinars from them. The problem is over time I started picking up my own things and kind of morphing. And so eventually I made the decision that, okay, I use some and I found some other things that I think are a little bit more effective. But I would say as a whole, their website is amazing. They have a search bar. You can type in whatever it is you're looking for, and they've got some free resources, and then they have some options for some paid things that I think are really valuable. I think it's worth it. I would recommend that. I really love Gordon Neufeld, his book Hold On to Your Kids. I've taken parent training from him. A lot of my anxiety teaching. Oh, you've got it right there. I love it. Love it. Yep. I love Gabor Mate. I love Gordon Neufeld. A lot, yeah, a lot of the anxiety and the anger teaching that I do. I specialize. I'll tell you my jam, my specialties are strong-willed kids because I have one and I am one. I get and anxiety and anger. Like those would be like my specialties. So I would recommend that. Um, those would be my two top for sure. For sure. I do love that. Now, I if I could offer a caution, something that I know is really popular right now that I would say just be careful is the whole gentle parenting trend right now. There is a trend towards something called gentle parenting, and it's not all bad. There are some really great things, but I think what it's done without truly diving deep into what gentle parenting really is, it ends up looking like permissive parenting. And then we lose it and we yell, and then it becomes reactive parenting. So I would just, my caution would be to avoid just getting gentle parenting tips off of social media because you're only getting a minute or two at a time. And all it will do is make you feel bad for getting angry and not actually give you the tools to what to do. We still need to have consequences. So that would be my like little red flag. Be careful of that.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you. And what are some resources in relation to this? If people want to dive deeper into this topic, what do you have that people
Mm,
can maybe yeah, springboard
yeah.
into?
Well, on my podcast, there is an episode. I don't have the numbers memorized, but there's an episode called The Alpha Kid. If you've got a strong-willed kid, I would recommend looking up the alpha kid because some kids are strong-willed, some kids are next level strong-willed, and I call them alphas. And for those kids, it's not about choices. For those kids, it's about power. And if you've got one of those kids, I would strongly recommend you find that podcast episode on my website or wherever you get your podcast. Type in Families Matter Most, and you'll be able to search through all of them. There's over 100. There's another one called Your 7-Year-Old. And I talk about, as I mentioned, why I get more phone calls from parents of 7-year-olds than any other age. Now, beyond that, my podcast has more strategies and tools for specific things like lying, for example, dealing with anger, trying to stay calm. So I would say, yeah, absolutely use the podcast as a free resource and please share it. Share it. Now, my website and podcast aren't specifically Christian. I try to keep it open for everyone. And so in these settings, I'll be more open about my faith. In the podcast, I might say something like, well, for me, my faith is important to me. And then for you, you decide. So I would encourage you, if you don't mind, to please refer and share the podcast with people in your life, believers, non-believers, anyone that you think it could be a useful resource to. I will say referral is the number one. Word of mouth is the number one way that my business has grown. So I'm super grateful anytime someone has shared this business to another family, a school, a church, an organization. I really appreciate that.
That's great. And if people are interested in having you come in to speak, how would they get a hold of you? Just through
Send
your
me, yeah, why don't you reach out through the email there, familiesmattermost@gmail.com. Or, of course, they can find you, Lori, and you can get me connected. But I would love to. If you have an organization, if you have a family, or if you yourself are interested in private coaching, yeah, let's connect. Let's have a free little Zoom call and talk about what that might look like.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just as a testimonial, I have done her private coaching as well. I don't know if you still um, have that, but it was wonderful. It really helped us in a time of need. So I highly recommend Jen, Dean, and Families Matters Most. It's been so good to have you. Doris, did you have any comments that you wanted to add in here before we close out today?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, even though this was directed to homeschoolers, these parenting tips apply to all parents. And like you said, whether they're Christian or even non-Christian, they apply so well to all parents. It brought me back to the years when I was a young mom and having a 7-year-old, and and some of those tips. It's such a great refresher for me now as a grandparent, and
Yeah.
how to just be that grandma in their life and following up with the same principles, because it helps the parents as well if I'm being as diligent as a grandma, because I do spend a lot of time with them.
Hmm.
And it's just, yeah, your work is very, very appreciated. And we will close now. And thank you for everybody for signing in. And Jen Dean, especially your words today. And may God be with you as you continue to influence so many people.
Thank you so much, Doris.
All
Yes.
right.